Hi, I'm Caden here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our NFL Week 16 predictions for the 2024 NFL season. Before we jump straight into those predictions, though, just a quick update on Cal and I's head-to-head pick'em game. We both had a very good week again last week, but I had an especially good week, only getting 3 of the 16 games wrong, which put me with 15 points and Callan with only 12 points, sending my lead by another 3 and giving us totals of me with 162 and Callan with 139. So it's looking like I'm really starting to lock in that regular season, and at this point even really giving myself a chance in the playoffs aspect of things. But it is never over till the fat lady sings, is what they say. So I am not getting too confident at all. I'm just going to keep my head down, keep grinding, and keep hoping, because I was thinking about it the other day. I don't know if I've ever won the whole thing.
Yeah,
Have I? Oh, okay.
Because the one year I had to wear Adrian Peterson jersey.
Oh yeah, I think I won the very first year and haven't won since. So I guess I'm due for a win, I guess, is what I'm hearing. We'll have to try to think of something. I forgot that we used to do a little like bets.
Yeah, the jersey swap.
Yeah, of course, now I bring that up now that I'm up by 30. Not earlier in the year, but no, we'll see how it all wraps out when it's all said and done. So to keep it going here with the Week 16 predictions, starting with the Thursday night football game, we have an AFC matchup with the Denver Broncos heading to Los Angeles to take on the Chargers. And we start, as we usually do on Thursday night, by agreeing. We both have the Chargers in this one. The Chargers and Broncos are both pretty well a shoe-in for the playoffs right now. I think both of them have an over an 80% chance to make it. Both of them have at least a 2-game, the Broncos even being a 3-game lead on anybody on the bubble right now. So this game definitely has some implication, but for the most part, it's just kind of a regular divisional game. I mean, any divisional game, no matter record, no matter playoff picture, it's always going to be that extra competition. But the Chargers realize that they do have their playoff chances already pretty well locked in, but they got a really good shot at that spot, or at that 6th seed, and even kind of depending on how the AFC North continues to beat up on each other throughout the year, really even has a shot on maybe even moving up to that 5th seed, because I want to say they're only a game behind, if not 2 games max behind the Baltimore Ravens and Pittsburgh Steelers, who are fighting it out for that division winner and 5th seed right now. So they know that they can move up the board, and they're not going to be satisfied with just kind of sitting at the 7th seed where they are right now. So I think that they have this home game here. I think they got a lot of momentum coming into this one. They got pretty well scarred last week, just torn up by Baker Mayfield and that Bucs offense. So they're going to come back with some vengeance, because I said they had momentum, but what I should have said is they had momentum before that game last week. So I think that they're going to do everything they can to get back on track in this one. And there's no better way to get back on track than by beating a divisional opponent, especially an upper echelon divisional opponent.
Yeah, I like the Chargers in this one because they kind of played a bad game last week, and I expect them to bounce back and have a much better game this week. They're definitely missing J.K. Dobbins, who's really became really a nice gear in that offense, and they're really missing him. You could tell that their running game hasn't been as effective because they definitely were led by their running game. J.K. Dobbins was one of the leaders in rushing up until his injury. So he will hopefully come back towards the end of the year, and maybe will help in their playoff run. But it's iffy if he comes. It's iffy if he does come back. So, but as far as this game goes, I think that Justin Herbert has a nice game, and he's able to beat that Broncos secondary, who is missing Riley Moss still. So they do have Patrick Surtain to second. But he is just one corner, and the other corners haven't been playing as well, minus Riley Moss, who like I said, the Broncos are surely missing because he was holding down that second cornerback spot. So we'll have to see which offense is able to get the ball going, whether that's Justin Herbert and Gus Edwards, or Bo Nix and his running back committee of Jalen McLaughlin and Javonte Williams. So, who both showed, Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin both showed that they had a nice running game last week, and the Broncos went against the Colts. So they were able to run down the clock once they got ahead and run out the clock on the Colts. So it'll be a fun game to watch, I think. It'll be much more entertaining than last Thursday's game, the barn burner that was 12-6 of the Rams 49ers. I think there'll be a lot more points scored this week in Thursday Night Football.
God, we can only hope. But yeah, the one big thing that the Broncos have shown this year, especially last week, but even throughout the whole year, is they're really good at taking advantage of momentum and really good at taking advantage of mistakes. And on the flip side of things, that's something that the Chargers are really good at as well, is not making that big mistake. So I think that's another reason is they can kind of get ahead a little bit and just never give the Broncos a chance, which is what I'm thinking will happen in that game. So now moving on, we actually have 2 Saturday games this week, starting with the noon Saturday game with the Houston Texans heading to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. And we agree again, we both have the Chiefs in this one. Now, the big kind of storyline around this game, of course, is Patrick Mahomes. He left the game late last week with an ankle injury, a pretty bad-looking ankle injury where he got kind of ripped to the ground and landed on that ankle being landed on after making a little weird jump pass, which, it was fun to watch when he was younger and he could do it consistently and really well. But I got to imagine even as a Chiefs fan at this point, when you watch him do stuff like that, you're just like, stop. Well, what are you doing? And I mean, they think that because eventually it's going to bite him, and this one it might have bit him. I mean, we shouldn't say much because the last time Patrick Mahomes went to the playoffs with an ankle injury, they went on to win the Super Bowl. So if history repeats itself here, they're going for a three-peat. But I don't know, this one seemed a little worse.
Yeah.
Even that last one when they won the Super Bowl, he was clearly uncomfortable. But this one, he truly looked hurt. Even after the game, they were driving around on the cart, which was maybe just a precaution, but maybe could have been a little worse. But all that being said, I still think that the Chiefs win this game in some ridiculous fashion. I mean, they're one of, I think it's either 4 or 5 teams to not score over 30 points this season. And the other 4 teams, none of them have more than 4 wins. And the Chiefs are sitting there at 13-1. So even with Mahomes, without Mahomes, they just find ways to win. They're so good on all 3 phases of the ball. The Texans just locked in a playoff spot. They can't really improve their playoff position much at all because they've already won their division, but they're so far behind all 3, the 1, 2, and 3 seed. So they're all but kind of locked in at the 4 right now and already have their division won. So they're not playing for a ton. I mean, if they win out and a lot of other crazy thing happen, they maybe move up to like the 3 seed, but sometimes the 4 seed is better than the 3 seed, just depending on how the wild card falls out. So I don't think that the Texans are going to be coming with a lot of momentum, and the Chiefs know that the Bills are on their ass right now for the 1 seed in that first round bye. So they're going to be playing with a lot more momentum than Houston, and they'll just find some weird ass way to win.
Yeah, I expect the Chiefs to win this one, whether it's Carson Wentz or Patrick Mahomes. Even though Carson Wentz is a nice veteran backup, he's been to the playoffs. He's, I believe, been in the league 10 years now, I want to say.
Oh, God, yeah,
so
it's got to be close.
He's definitely been around the block, and he's a nice backup to have. He's a little bit of a wild card because he can kind of get a little bit turnover crazy, but I think that in his older age and maybe with Andy Reid now calling plays, he might reel back on that a little bit. But one of the reasons that I expect the Chiefs to win is the running game of Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt, which is proving to be quite the tandem to deal with. Both went over 50 yards last week, and even though it was a low-scoring game, the Chiefs were able to keep the Browns at bay with a couple of turnovers. And I expect the Chiefs to have a couple of turnovers of C.J. Stroud this week, where C.J. Stroud has been a little bit more turnover prone than he was last year. So maybe just being a little bit more aggressive with the ball, maybe not being so conservative with it. So we'll see if he's more aggressive or how he really plays because the Texans are kind of locked into that 4 seed with not much movement between the 3 and the 4. It just depends how bad they want the 3 or the 4. It's, I guess, pick who you want to play kind of thing. So we'll see how much effort the Texans really put in, but I expect the Chiefs to find a way to win this one, especially because it's in Arrowhead.
Yeah, certainly. I couldn't agree more. Quick fact check, just because I did the math in my head. Year 8 for Carson Wentz, he was a 2016 guy because it was Goff. Yeah. It was Goff first overall and Wentz second overall.
Yeah, I knew it was about 10 years.
Insane to think about that was the big 2016 draft, was the Goff versus Wentz. That was so long ago, but crazy stuff there. So now moving on to our next game in a second Saturday game, this one being the afternoon one at 3:30. We have, 3:30 Central Time. We have the Pittsburgh Steelers heading to Baltimore to take on the Ravens for an AFC North divisional matchup. And we split on this one. Callan has the Ravens, but I lock in the Steelers as my upset. And call me crazy, because I am, but I don't even have much faith in the Steelers or backing in the Steelers. It's just the Steelers have had such an insane season that it just makes sense for them to go into Baltimore and beat the Ravens right here. Kind of, I think, especially because it'd give them the tiebreaker, if I'm not mistaken. It would lock in the AFC North for them, I believe, if they're able to go in. So a lot of momentum there, a lot of want there. And they've just done this crazy stuff all year. I mean, when it seems like they should be bad, when Justin Fields is their quarterback and it seems like they aren't going to do anything, they win a bunch of games in a row. And then they're like, well, we're winning, so let's switch quarterbacks, because that's always a good idea. And everyone says, you're dumb. Why are you switching quarterbacks? Yeah. You're winning with Fields. And they say, guess what? We're going to keep winning and be even more dominant in our winning now that we have Russell Wilson. But then they do things like go out and drop games to the Browns in the snow. And it's just like, what is happening with the Steelers? So even less than, I do think that they are a really good team and that they're just as good of a team as the Ravens and could easily beat the Ravens on the road. But even less than that, I think that they have just had such an insane season that it's like a storybook ending and a storybook way to kind of all but clinch the AFC North by beating Baltimore in Baltimore.
Yeah, it would be, but I don't see that happening. I see the Ravens coming out on top on this one. Really, this is going to be a dominant physical matchup. It's going to be fun to watch no matter what, no matter who comes out on top. It's going to be a physical one. And it's going to be a fight between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry and that TJ Watt-led defense. And then when the Steelers have the ball, it'll be Russell Wilson and maybe George Pickens. And I'm going off the basis that George Pickens does not play again this week, because he's still bothered by, I want to say it's a hamstring injury.
I believe so, yeah.
So, and those are tough for wide receivers to come back from. I've seen them end seasons before, just like it happened to Christian Watson last year. So it can happen, and where it takes receivers out for multiple games. And I think he'll miss another one. And without their top wide receiver, I think it's hard for them to score points, because the Ravens will focus in on the running game of Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, which is a nice running back duo. But when they can put 8 men in the box and force the Steelers to have to pass it, and I think that they won't have the receivers to answer against the Ravens cornerbacks, where even though the Ravens are one of the worst passing defenses, they are one of the better run defenses. So I think that it's going to be a strength versus strength, where it's going to be a lot of running game against these tough defenses on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, yep. I think this is a dark horse game of the week candidate. I think this could end up being a really good game. So now moving on to what we marked as our game of the week, we have an NFC East divisional matchup this time around, with the Philadelphia Eagles heading into Washington to take on the Commanders. And we agree on this one. We both have the Commanders, but Callan even has them marked as his upset.
I like them as a big upset this week, because Jaden Daniels has become the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And even though Bo Nix has put up a nice competition against him, Jaden Daniels has been doing it all year long, whereas Bo Nix has struggled at times. And I think it's going to be an explosive type matchup with the Eagles' explosive offense and Saquon Barkley going against that offense of Terry McLaurin and Jaden Daniels, where they've proved to become a high-powered offense. And really, you can't forget about the running game of the Commanders, led by Brian Robinson Jr., was putting together a really nice, solid season. And he's playing a healthy season, which is really big for him. And I think that he's going to be huge in the playoffs when and if the Commanders clinch that spot. But as far as this game goes, I like the Commanders to upset the Eagles because, well, the Eagles have been a little bit of infighting going on. And they had kind of an easier opponent last week, and they were able to dominate and really put on that passing game on display. Whereas I think the Commanders' defense will give them a much tougher test and look for the passing game to get shut down, and it be all in the hands of Saquon Barkley, which he's single-handedly won games before. So he can do it himself also. But I look for Saquon to have an MVP type performance this week. And if he does, look for the Eagles to win. But I like the Commanders to pull off an upset on maybe a game-winning field goal.
Yeah, it's ironic in a year where guys like Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr.'s were kind of the front runners for Offensive Rookie of the Year, which is unusual. Usually you get quarterback as the front runner. It's been one of the most across-the-board successful quarterback drafts that we've seen in a while. I mean, Caleb Williams doesn't have the win, but he has had some of the flashy plays. But then guys like Jaden Daniels and Bo Nix have been playing really well and have their teams in playoff positions. Drake May hasn't gotten the starts and doesn't have his team in the playoff position, but he's played really well during those starts. McCarthy looked good before the injury. Michael Penix, we're finally going to get to see starting this week, this time around. Spencer Rattler, when he got his chances, had looked really good. So it's ironic that the first time in a long time that people kind of underrated the quarterback and all these guys showed up and were like, oh, no. This is the quarterback draft that you've been waiting for. So good on them, and good on Jaden Daniels specifically, who's, as you mentioned, I'd completely agree, is the front runner. But to get to why I think the Commanders are going to win, partly, of course, because of Jaden Daniels, but I completely agree. You already touched on it a little bit, and that's Brian Robinson Jr. He's had a little bit of on and off, healthy and unhealthy throughout the year. He's missed a few games here and there, but he's had a good streak of some healthy games, and he's kind of been quiet recently. And I think that all flips right here. I think that he finally gets it going right now. I think that he absolutely goes off against this Eagles defense, which is not a bad run defense by any means. They have one of the better across-the-board defensive lines really in the league, maybe arguably. So, I mean, when it comes to the run game, having the defensive tackles they have with guys like Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter, it's going to be tough sledding, but that's kind of where Brian Robinson thrives is tough sledding, when he can really just get those ground and pound yards, because he's one of the last true workhorses. He's one of those put the ball in my hands, put the team on my back type guys, kind of like Saquon Barkley right on the other side of the ball in the Eagles offense. So I think this is going to be a super close game, and if the Eagles are able to pick up a win and kind of continue their dominance of the NFC East, I wouldn't be surprised at all. I think we start to kind of see some turning tides, and I think that Washington kind of proves, hey, we're supposed to be here. We can beat these NFC East teams. We can beat these upper echelon teams, and they're able to pull off a win for their hometown fans who have hope for the first time in a long time, pretty much since Dan Snyder got hired, to be dead honest. So they're going to be there.
Well, and they had some RG3 hope there.
Yeah, that's true.
We're out of in the playoffs.
That was 12 years ago.
Yeah.
So, they're going to be there, and they're going to be loud. They're going to be cheering on their Commanders. So now moving it down the list a little bit further to talk about the Vikings game. We have the Minnesota Vikings on the road to take on the Seahawks, just as the Packers did last week. And we split again here. I have the Vikings, but Callan marks the Seahawks.
Yeah, I like the Seahawks in this one, and it may be Sam Howell going up against the Minnesota Vikings, which is probably going to deter my pick a little bit. But I think Geno Smith plays, just because I haven't heard that he's not going to play. As far as I know, he's been practicing in a limited fashion, so he's on track to start, but he might not be 100%. But if he is, I expect that Seahawks wide receiver trio of Jackson Smith-Njigba and Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf to step up and have huge games against this Minnesota Vikings defense. Because even though Brian Flores does make up some exotic blitzes, they can get beat deep sometimes. So I expect some big plays from the Seahawks and maybe even some explosive runs from Zach Charbonnet. And there is a chance that Kenneth Walker comes back. He was doubtful last week, so he may be more questionable this week. and maybe has a better chance to play? And if so, look out, because that's another two-headed monster running back tandem team of the Seahawks. It really is a dangerous running back duo because both of them are starting caliber running backs. And I do expect the Vikings to put up a fight. Sam Darnold has played really well this year. He put up another not two touchdown game, but a nice game. He's performing at a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is the best of his career. And he also is leading his first winning season of his career. So it'll be nice to see if he's able to continue his successful run against the Seahawks, where they do have a really good secondary. But I expect the Vikings running game to be the key to victory if the Vikings win this one. But I like the Seahawks pull off the upset in Seattle, because Seattle is a tough place to play. And look out for those 12 fans, because they can be really loud.
Yeah, the 12th man is a huge bonus for them. I think that the Vikings do pull off a win here. I talk about it a lot that the Vikings love to play to their opponent, which really bites us against these middle of the pack teams a lot, because we play down to them, but then they're not like the complete garbage can teams in the league. So if you play down to them, they're going to pass you up. They're going to find a way to beat you, which is what happens to us a lot. And it's the same way that we can play up and beat kind of some of those upper echelon opponents like we have this year when we've been able to. So that does kind of make me a little nervous. But overall, I think that with the injuries on Seattle's side of things, even if some of these players do play like Kenneth Walker, Geno Smith, they're not going to be 100%. So that's a huge advantage for the Minnesota Vikings injury-wise. My kind of key, not matchup per se, but something I'm really looking at on both sides of the ball is actually both of these teams' offensive line. And more than anything, not their performance, but their health. I mean, the Seahawks have had a lot of injury troubles with their offensive line, lots of moving around. The Vikings, of course, lost Christian Darrisaw, who was our bookend left tackle earlier in the year, but we also recently lost Cam Robinson. So right now, the left side of our offensive line is Oli Udoh at left tackle and Blake Brandel at left guard, which is just far from ideal. But luckily, we still have Garrett Bradbury, who's been our starting center for, 5-6 years now. We got Dalton Reisner, who's a free agent pickup, not this season, but last offseason, who's been playing really well. And then Brian O'Neill, he had some injuries and missed some time last week against the Bears. So I think he's going to be starting, but is he 100%? That's a big question mark right there. So the health of both these offensive lines is a huge thing. But overall, when your offenses are both kind of questionable right now, injury-wise, play-wise, however you want to look at it, comes down to the defenses, and the Vikings defense, and more than anything, Brian Flores has just been absolutely phenomenal last week, the week before, and the whole season. So I could see this one very easily being a close game and the Vikings kind of playing down to the Seahawks level, especially going into Seattle. But nonetheless, I do see us pulling out a win and continuing to control the fate of our team in the playoffs. So now moving on to the two primetime games, starting with what is definitely in a fight for one of the worser Sunday night football matchups of the year. We have an NFC matchup with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers heading to Dallas to take on the Cowboys. And we both agree in this one. We both have the Buccaneers. Now, last year, the big thing with the Cowboys was if they're at home, they're a shoo-in win. And with this year, it seems to be the dead opposite. It seems to be if they're at home, they're going to play like an absolute dumpster fire. So that's kind of what I'm banking on here. And more than the Bucs winning this game, I think that the Cowboys lose this game. They did look really good against the Panthers last week. I will give them that. But they were on the road and against the Panthers, who are on an upswing, certainly, but still even an upswing for the Panthers with how they've played this year. It's not going up very high, to say the least. So I don't think that was by any means a statement win by the Cowboys. I think that they're still kind of the struggling team that they've been all year. And the Bucs absolutely dominated a pretty damn good team in the Los Angeles Chargers. Those out-of-conference matchups are kind of always hard to really judge because those teams face each other so few that it could just be any given Sunday type thing. The Chargers were coming all the way from LA down to Florida, which is a huge travel. So lots of factors that I think last week made the Bucs look better than they actually are, and the Cowboys look better than they actually are. But nonetheless, when you compare these two teams head to head, I think the Bucs are much better than the Cowboys and find a way to win.
Yeah, not only because of this whole Cowboys losing at home all the time now, But also, I think that Baker Mayfield is the better quarterback in this matchup, and he's going to show that he is the better quarterback. Also, you can't rule out Mike Evans, who's putting together another stellar season, even though he missed a few games with a hamstring tear. He has recovered and bounced back from that hamstring injury very well and continues to put up dominant numbers where he looks to put up a 1,000-yard season for the, I want to say it'd be the 10th.
It's literally got to be like the 9th or 10th. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he's able to do that, and as we're up there with Hall of Fame caliber numbers and players, so it'll be interesting to see if he's able to break 1,000 yards during these last few weeks. But even though the Cowboys do have CeeDee Lamb and have maybe found a running back in Rico Dowdle, I just don't think it's enough for them to overcome the Buccaneers because the Buccaneers just have too much firepower, and the coaching matchup I think is definitely in the Buccaneers' favor. Where Mike McCarthy is kind of burnt out. The Cowboys aren't eliminated yet, but I think they could be eliminated with a loss this week. So look for the Cowboys to be a disappointment. And I think the Bucs and Baker Mayfield walk away with a big victory here on their path to the NFC South title.
The Cowboys will fight tooth and nail if there's even a chance. They will fight tooth and nail all the way into a mid-teens pick and just to screw themselves over.
Mm-hmm.
They do it every time they don't make the playoffs. It's so funny. But now moving on to our final game for Week 16, we have the singular Monday Night Football game with the New Orleans Saints heading to the tundra of Green Bay to take on the Packers. And we finished by agreeing. We both have the Packers in this one, and Callan even doubled down as his lock.
Yeah, this is a game that's tailor-made for the Packers. You got a rookie quarterback coming in, a team from the South coming up north, and you got a dominant defense, or turnover-prone defense, playing a rookie quarterback. And I think that's just the recipe for a really nice Monday night victory for the Packers. Look for Jordan Love to have a nice receiver, a nice connection going with his receivers. I don't expect him to have to go over 250 yards because I think Josh Jacobs will be another 100-yard rusher, at least 80 yards and a touchdown again, because the Saints have really just been a letdown this season, and they are very injury prone and very beat up. They have most of their top targets and their big players are hurt or out for the season, including guys like Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Derek Carr. Alvin Kamara might not play because of his groin injury, and even if he does, he won't be 100%. So that'll make a big impact on this Saints offense where they are just not the same without Kamara. And I look for the Packers to walk away with a double-digit victory on Monday night.
Yeah, I think you are spot on. I mean, I don't really have much to add. Couldn't agree more. Spencer Rattler tried to show off some magic last week against the Commanders, but wasn't even able to do it then. And the Packers are a much better team, a much more complete team than the Commanders.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be much colder than when they face the Commanders. So just everything is stacked against the Saints. It's going to be a very impressive win if they are able to pull something out. But there's no way that happens.
No.
I don't.
This is the most confident I've been all season.
I don't see a path. I don't see a future where the Saints win this game. So I got the Packers as well. So that was our Week 16 predictions for the 2024 NFL season. Thank you all so much for watching our episodes this week. Make sure you stay tuned in until next week when we react to these games and then talk about Week 17, where the playoff picture truly starts getting locked in left and right. So make sure you stay tuned until that, and thank you so much for the support lately. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.